And welcome. It's Ari Rosenbaum here, 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time. Of course, Lyle already made me a little bit sensitive about my hair, but I assure you by May the 1st, I will get my hair cut. I'm just waiting for that second vaccine shot to kick in once I get it. But thank you for everybody being here. This may be the last virtual conference that we do. Hopefully, we're going to be live in September. That's the plan. Houston, St. Louis, Minnesota. But as I always say, the best laid plans of mice and men. And I thought that we would have had those live events sometime in 2020, but now here we are in 2021. So anyway, thank you for joining us. And first things first, Lyle Himbaugh at Granite Group, you're up next.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So if you just tell me if you guys can see my screen, that would be great.
I can see it.
You got it all good? So
yep, I see it.
So Ari asked me to talk a little bit about the latest buzz about PEPs and what's happening out there. So I'm going to, talk. If anyone has a question, I don't know how see if I can pop up the question and answer. So if everyone has a question, just pop it up, or Ari, if you can just, if I don't notice something, if you could just pop it in for everybody.
Sure, of course.
So I'm going to talk about what we perceive. Granite Group, works and partners with advisors. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I see that's happening, the PEPs, which is the big hot topic, where I see advisors going forward, a solution, and some things I would challenge you guys to do down the road. Right now, the pandemic was a game shifter that's already in our rearview mirror. But what it really has taught a lot of employers is that they really need to be a little bit more proactive. And now we're living in a semi or remote society for the moment. I think my personal take that will subside, not completely, but it will subside. People will start coming back to work sometime in the fall. I know companies that are going to require it in 2022. That's going to happen. But what employers are really looking for, they're really looking for protection. They're looking for service, and this is very important for the advisors to understand that the advisors are going to have to, operate a little bit differently, and they're looking for employee investment education and for their new remote workforce. So one of the things that when advisors going in to present, the first thing they want to do is to make sure that anything that they don't want to be responsible for a lot of things anymore. People just want to serve a turnkey approach. They want their liability reduced. They want to make sure that that advisor is going to be have more engagement with and provide a lot more investment education. You really can't rely on these record keepers anymore. It's very important, and you got to look at some of the technology that's out there. So record keepers do a good job about getting people to see how much they need to put away, but then there's more to it, and that's where the advisor is going to have to play a stronger role. And that's where I already see that happening. The advisors that were very aggressive marketing and being with their employees over this last year are really been the winners from the advisors that have called me in. I'm going to talk a little bit about a PEP. Any questions so far? Just go ahead and shoot something out there. A PEP is, was created out of the Secure Act, right? So it's a pooled employer plan. It means that it's really, for those who are not aware of it, it's really a bunch of 401k plans inside of a large 401k plan. And really the main purpose of these PEPs is not only to offload the investment liability, having a 330 investment fiduciary, but it also offloads a lot of the operational functions and liability, right? So it's almost like having a built-in 316 into these. It really does help out. And I'm going to give you my take on PEPs and what I think. And we have a PEP, but it's only for a certain segment of the population, right? So I think they're here to stay. I think it'll be good for some employers, and I think some employers it won't be good for. It just really depends on the situation. But with PEPs, the PEP, is the plan sponsor. They're the pooled plan provider, right? They're the 6316. It's like they became the employer and responsible for everything. The employer is not going to have to hire or fill out 5,500s in forms like they used to. Some PEPs provide different types of investment fiduciary protection. So that sort of helps out about that, but really provides a higher level of protection on the operational side. So, and that's what employers really, really need. They do, because you can't imagine an employer who does something once a year to remember it year after year. It really is going to take the advisor to do that. So some of the things that, there's lots of PEPs out there. And they're being created. I think the last I checked, there's about 40 to 42 that have actually registered and filed and are ready to go. It's sort of interesting in the landscape. They actually thought there would be hundreds and hundreds of these things, and so far that hasn't taken hold. So one of the things you want to look at is the type of investment fiduciary. Are they a 321? Is there a 338? How does that work? What kind of support are they providing for the advisor? What kind of support are they going to provide for the plan sponsor, the employer? What kind of technology and services are in addition to the traditional services that are out there? And this is my big warning in letters out there. There are PEPs being created that have been created, and so for those advisors out there who have 1, 2, 3 plans that are smaller in nature, those plans are going to find their way to a PEP. You just don't want them to find their way to a PEP like a Vanguard or Aon, because those PEPs are not, they do not let the advisor play. So you'd lose a client. So the idea is you want to make sure that PEP that you're looking to help your client with allows you to be a part of the process. Very important. The biggest thing I hear about and read about constantly is engagement, and it's a big deal. And so I speak to advisors all over the country, from California to Texas, Michigan, Florida, Georgia, Boston, and I keep telling that they really need to up their game. They can't rely on the record keepers service anymore. So advisors, advisors need to do more FaceTime, whether it's a Zoom meeting. Hopefully these things go away eventually or get reduced, because I think everyone's got computer burnout, but you got to be in front of the employer-employee. The advisors are more powerful than I think they are. I think they have a lot of influence, especially if you have an employer that really trusts you. He's going to really listen to the advice that you're going to provide. And there's just about more support when there's questions or answers. They want their advisor to be there. So essentially, the advisor is going to have to engage with the employees on and be more proactive with them. Provide more insight. On reaching dreams. We don't use at Granite Group. We don't use the word retirement because there's a finality to that. We want to say, what's your goal? What's your dream? Because if you talk about retiring, means everything's going to stop. Well, most people don't get excited or committed to do that. So one thing you can get away from this is just don't use the word retirement. Use a goal. You want to buy a boat. You want to live on a beach. You want to go to a bar in Jamaica for the rest of your life. Whatever it is, you just go out and make sure they realize that dream. And the biggest thing for employers, and I've signed this now. I'm in with a lot of franchises right now in our PEP, and the number one thing I'm seeing here is that they need a hook to attract and maintain, because essentially small employers are really in competition with the government with all their unemployment and COVID money and all this other stuff that's coming out. A lot of employers are choosing that, I can go to work and make X, or I can go here and make X, but if I go, if I get my unemployment and my COVID money, I don't really need to work. They don't understand that's going to run out, but there are really a lot of competition out there. So we really got to get out there and find a way to attract, the employers are looking for the advisor as a part of the cog in the wheel to help them attract and maintain it. And one of the things, here's some things that we do here that hopefully that will help you. You know, for very large standalone plans that we have, we try to message people, give them either by age group or by time zone, if they have multiple time zones, you know, because everyone's a little bit different. You know, we have a company that has like 8 locations around the country, and they have actually different personalities. So you really got to get to know the culture and how you want to present and what you want to say. Everyone's been under a lot of stress, and I think some of the stresses are just doing a lot of Zoom meetings and stuff like that. So people need a way to address different things, and stress is about like how to choose what's the right investment, how to do that. You want to craft messages. You know, what we do know about employees is that there's some very brave people that don't have investment knowledge. That doesn't make them stupid. That just makes them unknowledgeable. So they need, you know, especially millennials, they really need help to figure out what is going to be right for them. So you got to be able to craft a message that is going to be clear and succinct and simple, so they'll actually take an action. And one of the other things out there is technology, especially for we just got hired by a large plan in Michigan last week, and they have like 6 locations within the state of Michigan. It's a lot of employees, and we have some technology that helps people communicate. So my point is that advisors are going to have to think of ways, and you got to think out of the box. You just don't let a record keeper do it for you. Record keepers do a good job. I'm not disparaging a record keeper. I'm just saying that the advisor is going to have to think and do different things to become more important to their clients, right? That's important. Here's a question here from Mike Webb. Which existing small plans do you think will be less likely to find their way to a PEP? That's a good question. Small plans would be defined by under 100 people, Mike. That's how I would define it. It really depends. If they have infrastructure, if they have someone who's going to be dedicated to as an HR function, those plans might not. But the people who don't have HR functions or plan committees or stuff, those types of clients are perfect for a PEP where everything will be done for them. It's those types. Sophisticated clients. I have sophisticated clients that have, 4 or 5 person investment committees, and they have very complicated plans. They would not be suitable for a PEP. A PEP is the way I liken it. This is why you have to be careful what you get. There's going to be lots of PEPs, and some PEPs are good and some PEPs it is. But the bottom line is for these PEPs is that you really need to like this PEP, and you need to like their investments and how they do things and how they communicate and how they do things, because it's like, how would you like your Model T? Would you like it in black, black, and black? But if you don't like that color black, after a while and it gets old, you need to change, right? So you got to be careful what's out there. Some PEPs are like, it's my way or the highway. So just think about what you believe would be correct for your client to be. So I'm not in favor of large plans that having investment committees. They're pretty much covered under all the different rules and regs out there. So what we did at Grant Group is that we created a PEP, and so we had a lot of small plans that were rolling up, and we are now in a few different franchise loops, and I'm telling you right now, between the different advisors and different resources, we're probably pulling in 3 to 4 plans a month, and we just started. I haven't even marketed. It's just sort of happening. The real skinny on us is that we're really asset managers. I don't have a Granite Group growth fund or anything else like that. We're real managers. My partner was head of quantitative analytics at Bernstein, ran the money management program at Credit Suisse. I was a money manager at a firm called DLJ, Donaldson, Lufkin, Jenrette, bought by Credit Suisse. We met. We wanted to start up a company that did the right thing, and then for very wealthy families. and we evolved into, which we still have, by the way, but pensions, endowments, families. But one of our clients asked us to do, can you work with he wanted us to run money for his employees the way we run it for him inside a 401k plan. That's why we got into the business. It's really just to do the right thing for employees. That's what it was all about. We have a very consistent model. You've probably heard this from a bunch of other people, and we want to get the highest probability of consistent results. We have a pretty strenuous system out there. None of those funds are proprietary to us. That allows us to hire and fire at will, and it really does work. And by the way, just from an investment perspective, just know that some index funds do not do well in their indexes. And if you guys want some information on that, reach out to me, get my email through Ari or whatever, and I'll be happy to go into that and tell you why that is. So what we do to make it really simple for employees is that all too often we see these plans that have 3 or 4 large cap value funds. And the problem is that most people will not be able to decipher or even realize that those are actually the same funds in the same asset class. So we have one fund per asset class. That way the employee, when he does his own allocation, he will be diversified. To make it simple further, we created models from the fund lineup. So for those people who don't want to do the allocation, we do that. We do not charge an extra fee like a stadium or anything like that. We don't charge any management fee. And then we realized that people couldn't do that. So I'm bringing this down on the screen. What we do is we create a website for each individual plan. It's password protected by plan. The advisor will send out this questionnaire. Prior to an enrollment meeting, we will help the advisor in any way, shape, or form. Any question, whatever's out there is great. And they take this, send this out. The client, employees get a score. It's 60-40% bonds, depending on who the record keeper is. To us, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it's Fidelity, Empower, TIAA, Principal. We have plans on probably about 12 different record keeper systems. We're agnostic. It's whatever the client wants, whatever the advisor wants. But what we're doing here is that we're giving them the ability, the individual employee, the ability to get something that's right for them. So if they like this, they log on to whomever the record keeper is, buy the model, log off. And what we just did is delivered a personal allocation to that employee with no management fee and no financial engines fee. What we do, this is a communication device, right? So this communication device, it's an engagement tool. We have quarterly education. We have quarterly commentaries, same commentaries that go to private clients, special announcements, and things like that. So one of the things we'll put out here is back in October. This is part of our quarterly education. There was a big divergence between growth and value. Most people don't understand the difference between growth and value. So we showed them the difference between growth and value. We told them that these are growth stocks because people don't know what a growth stock is. And we say these are value stocks because people don't know what a value stock is. And then we asked everybody a question. What happens when people get more confident to go back out when there's a vaccine? So we put this out on October 30th. And then we said, hey, we named the funds. We told them over here, if you're in our models, we have those value funds in there. And sure enough, Pfizer came out with a vaccine. The value stocks, as everybody on this call would probably imagine, have taken off. And so that's been a great thing. Bloomberg picked me up, wanted me to talk about this back on November 30th. And basically regurgitated what I said on November 30th, or what I said on October 30th to our advisors' clients. So we put out a lot of information. What happens here when you put out this kind of information, it gets people thinking. So it really allows the advisor to stay in front of their clients when they can't be there every 10 seconds. The other cool thing about this is you can change this whole site into any language you want, right? So we can white label this site out there to do what we want. We white label this. We can put the client's name or the advisor's name up here. We have the About Us up here. We put all this, we make this all about the advisor. So we actually don't appear on this at all. It's always going to be about the employee and the advisor for us. So that's what we do. This is a device that's site that's password protected. It can be downloaded and saved to a home screen, so it looks and feels like an app, which is absolutely perfect for the millennials. You know, anyone under 45 wants a phone. This is how they can get information no matter where they are, especially in this new remote world that's out there. That is what we believe is a good tool. I would challenge people to, on a couple things. I don't know of anyone that has this type of device. And then secondly, I don't know of anyone who will come out and say what they think about the markets and exactly what they should be doing. That's very different out there. There's not too many 338s I know of. In fact, I don't know of another 338 that says, go out and do this. This is where to go. So that really helps the advisor out. Saves a lot of time in meetings. It just saves a lot of time. So that's what we do to empower advisors, to make them always be in the forefront of the employer and employees' minds. So our PEP does all those things. You know, we're a 338, the personal allocation, the models, all that stuff is included. We're going to reduce operational investment liability. We white label the site for the advisor, and we reduce a lot of service time for the advisor as well. It's really a nice turnkey approach that we tried to make as simple as we could. And here's one example of what happened. This is a client that we had the map and we converted it to a PEP, but the client had 21 basis points in admin fees, 90 basis points in fiduciary and other types of fees, not including mutual funds. So the client was paying 1.1. We brought, if you follow these arrows, we brought those fees down to 0.11 and 0.25 within the PEP. But now we're adding on an operational fiduciary function. That's called a 316, where we sign the 5,500, right? So the employee doesn't. That's added on. We don't charging us for that. Customized allocation models. We don't charge a fee for that. The website, we don't charge a fee for. All these are additional features that this plan did not have before that we added on at this price point. And that leaves that difference between the 1.1 and the 36 bips, what it costs, leaves a lot of room for the advisor to do what they feel is appropriate for their relationship with their client. Okay. So Mike here, famously a large payroll provider announced that they are signing up 1,000 employers, all who had not previously sponsored a retirement plan, to its PEP within 1 month of the launch. Part of me says, wow, that's great. Employees of 1,000 employees are now covered under a retirement plan where they were not covered before. But another part of me says, wow, this seems it could be a recipe for a disaster. It depends, Mike. It's a great question. I think I'd be very circumspect to what kind of output they're giving. That's to enroll 1,000 people that quickly, 1,000 employers. That means that's a lot of people to enroll. I would be very, very, cautious to see how they did that. I'd be more worried about execution, operational execution to handle all that. But then I don't know what they're getting. I don't know who it is. But then again, then it's up to the advisor to make sure they're doing due diligence on behalf of the employer to make sure that PEP is correct. Just throwing a bunch of people into a product doesn't make it correct or right or the best, right? So here's how we operate. So it's all about employee engagement and the employer. The advisor's here, you're here, and we're over here. We don't talk to the employer or the employees. It's all about between the employer, the advisor, and the employee. So So you guys are over here and we're just off to the side. I will tell you, if you needed custom stuff done, some sort of communication for a particular client, we'll do it. We're here to answer your questions on investments all the time. So if you need something special or different, the answer is that we'll do it for you. Now, Paychex, that's funny. Thanks, Mike. It's Paychex. Well, Paychex has had some other legal problems, so I'd be a little cautious on Paychex. Mike, do you know if they allow advisors to participate? That would be interesting. So here's my challenge to everybody. I've got like 4 minutes left. My challenge is, you got to kick the tires here a little bit. And here's some easy questions that you'd want to give to an employer as you're prospecting. Would you like to take on less responsibility? Would you like would you like a remote communication tool for your employees? Do you want a program that will entice your employees to stay? So those questions are really obvious, but the point is you want the employer to say yes. Because once they say yes, that's when you ask for the meeting, because of course you'll say yes after saying yes 3 times already. So my challenge to you guys is and ladies, excuse me, and whoever else is out there, is that, try us out. Bring one prospect. I will help you do the presentation. I helped an advisor close multiple plans here recently, and I did the presentations for him, actually. He participated, but it was basically a presentation that I designed for his clientele. So you just let me know what you want to do. You guys don't know me from Adam, but I am highly ethical, and I consider everyone's relationship important, and we will do what it takes to make you and the employer look great. Is there any other questions other than Mike's? And that's about it. Anyone else have anything to say? Ari?
Thank you.
Okay.
In my discussion, I have the discussion about PEPs. So,
Oh, sorry.
No. Because my discussion about PEPs is a little bit different. I love the, I don't want to talk about the whole, I love the announcements that everybody has their own PEP, but nobody's ever had the announcement that they have actual assets in those PEPs.
Well, I can tell you right now, we probably have about 25 or 30 plans. We don't have 1,000 like Paychex, but those plans are pretty tiny. We will do startup plans and all that, but we tend to take our time, because we want to set up the plan correctly, because if you set up correctly, you'll have less problems later. And
Right.
Or if you don't mind, I'm going to take one extra minute here, and I just want to let everyone know that we got a go ahead from a broker dealer to set up a solo 401k PEP that we pitched them about 5 months ago. And we will have that up and rolling within the next probably 60 days. So for those people, a lot of brokerage firms and a lot of people do not want to deal with a single, set up these accounts and with TPAs and record keepers and doing that stuff. So it'll be just like what I just showed you, but it's going to be for a sole proprietor. Okay. Okay. All righty. Thank you for your time. Call me with any questions. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Our next presenters are going to be my friends from the Serato Group, Teresa Conti and Pat Shelton, who are going to talk about, one of the things that I find interesting is so many consolidations in the TPA business, but there's still room, in my opinion, and that's actually something else I'm going to talk about at 1 o'clock or 5 minutes after 1, about still so many great local smaller TPAs that do a fantastic job. And Teresa and Pat, please take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Ari, for having us. And hi, everybody. I'm Teresa Conti, and Pat Shelton is with me. We are 2 of the founding members of the Serato Group, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And people might be asking, okay, who's the Serato group? What does this mean to me? You know, what's happening? So I'll just kind of dive right in. We are actually a group of 9 retirement consulting TPAs who have formed together. We've actually formed a 501c6 trade association so that we can share ideas. We can really lobby, and I'm using that word lately, for the betterment really of all TPAs. So the Serato group, there's 9 of us currently. We will be adding others to our group. We officially formed at the beginning of March, although we've been working on this for probably a good 8 months or more. Amongst the 9 TPAs that are part of this group, we have 134 credentialed employees. I mean, we have way more employees than that, but employees who have different types of credentials with ARA, with NIPA, organizations like that. Amongst us, we have about 9,200 plans managed, about 18 billion of assets under administration, about 325,000 participants. In 2020, we sold over 1,500 new plans, and that was definitely a down year. I would guess that number to be between 2,000 and 2,500 this coming year. So we definitely are doing that. We have plans in all 50 states amongst us, and we have true representation in about 40 states, which means if our home office is here or we have a sales type person there, a consultant in one of those other states. So we definitely kind of cover the whole country from a national presence is what we would like to say. But we all still are independently owned third-party administration, consulting firms in our local markets. So that's very important to us. You know, with all the consolidation going on, we really wanted to maintain our independence and all that, but we wanted to kind of have that bigger sense of feeling. So we formed the Serato group to make that work. Now,
Hey,
why?
Teresa.
Yep, go ahead, Pat.
No, I was just going to add real quick, if you bounce back one slide for me real quick. We're getting ready to add a 10th group to the Serato group, which actually will be the largest firm joining the group. And that'll put us at about 13,000 plans and 23.5 billion of assets under administration and 450,000 participants. And we think by the end of this year, we'll probably be up to somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 TPA member groups. So this organization's growing, and we're getting a really positive response. We rolled it out March 1st, spoken with every record keeper, and our peers are reaching out saying, can we be part of this? So.
Yep, great. So thanks, Pat. And so back to, why did we pick this name? What does the Serato, what is the Serato, and what does it have to do with who we are? So the Serato is the most biodiverse savanna on the planet. It is about 21% of Brazil's landmass. About 5% of the world's plants and animals are part of the Serato. The future of the Serato is kind of in danger, right? Because of human influence, climate change, all those kind of things. But the Serato is also very diverse, which really speaks to us, right? As TPAs, we are diverse. We're powerful in a lot of ways. Like we run plans. We want to be that trusted advisor with our clients. One of my favorite things that I say to clients when they say, why would I use a TPA? Well, would you run your business without a good CPA? Why would you run your plan without a really good TPA to help you navigate that? We have very deep roots, right? We have all those credentialed employees. We have continuing education that we do. We really look for that. We have a lot of areas of expertise, which we'll talk about. So that's definitely part of it. And in a lot of ways, we're kind of threatened, right? We're threatened by things going on in our industry, consolidation, people not sometimes seeing the value. So we kind of really feel that way. And then I mentioned at the last bullet point is the upside down forest. It's really one of the most valuable parts of the Serato. So a lot of the root systems of the trees in the Serato are underground, and they really act like a sponge. And they stash enough rain when it rains in the wet season to really sustain themselves throughout the year. And we really kind of feel that way. The Serato, that name really spoke to us when we started thinking about the messaging. So Pat, did you have anything to add there? I'll kind of stop and let you add if you have anything to add there. You're on mute.
I apologize. No, I think you did a great job, Teresa. The one thing I would say is that what's pretty cool about the Serato is it's called, like you mentioned, the upside down forest. So 70% of it's actually underground. And we kind of see some parallels between that and TPAs. We're a really well kept secret in the industry. And we really, I don't want to say dominate, but do a lot of business in the micro market. And the parallels between what's going on in the industry and our environment are there. And what we're trying to do is really advocate for TPAs as well as the environment. So
Awesome. Okay. So what are our beliefs? And I'm just going to go through these kind of briefly, but again, these really spoke to us when we talked about that. You know, the best businesses have the deepest roots. You know, those roots really propel that upside down forest forward. And that's what we really feel too, is that our businesses really help propel the retirement plan industry forward. Our uncommon diversity propels our uncommon strength, right? We work in a very specialized technical kind of world. And together, our strength together is really fortified. We practice, we understand all parts of our industry. We're really trying to advocate for the TPA world. We're fiercely independent, right? We really, not only are we still all independently owned firms, right? We want to have positive outcomes for our clients. We're not stuck on autopilot. We're not trying to put our clients in a box. We're trying to develop retirement plans that really, really work for them. Problems or opportunities in camouflage, right? We come across it all the time. Plan design issues help us create those opportunities for growth, improvement, value for our clients, right? We fix broken plans. It's one of Pat's favorite things, and I'm stealing his thunder a little bit. But you know, fixing broken plans is a big part of who we are, and we come across them all the time. We bend like rivers, and this is one of my favorite things. And people are like, "What does that mean?" Well, we're constantly on the lookout for new information, better approaches, new routes, right? How to bend around the obstacles that might be in a client's way to get really the best result they want for their retirement plan. Communication is key, right? Our work is so detailed, complex, and really having those conversations, being clear, concise, really shows us to be the experts that we are. And my final point here is stewardship. You know, we really want to enrich the lives of people we touch, right? That's all of our plan sponsors, all of the participants. Even though we may not touch them directly, we're still working with them for better retirement outcomes. So again, Pat, I'll stop. And if there's anything you wanted to add.
I think you did it well. Thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Pat, and let you cover some of our services and other stuff.
Sure. Thanks, Ari, for having us, and hello to everyone. I'm Pat Shelton. I run a third-party administrative firm in St. Louis, Missouri. Our footprint's the lower Midwest. Teresa is actually in Arizona, covering that territory for the Serato Group. Related to the services we provide, we work on all different plan types. What makes us a little unique is we can do both ERISA and non-ERISA plans, 403Bs, governmental type plans, and we also have group specialization in ESOPs. Teresa had mentioned consulting. One of the things that the group is very strong in is tax advantage plan designs. And then one of our taglines is we fix broken retirement plans. I was doing a presentation earlier today, and I remembered a consulting engagement we had where we had a client come to us, a doctor who was retiring, and basically said, I haven't filed this 5,500 thing for 25 years. Is that a problem? And if we're like, yeah, that's a big problem, especially since you're going to retire. And if you got caught, the excise penalty would be 50% of $3 million. That would not be nice. So we bring a lot of value to both advisors, TPAs, and plan sponsors. And within the group, we provide actuarial services and 316 fiduciary services. We actually have 3 member firms currently that are dedicated to actuarial services. And then we also have 316 service providers in the group as well.
Sorry.
Yep,
Slide.
sorry.
There you go.
So what a TPAs really do is that we provide a really good, well-run TPAs, proactive engagement to clients. I think one of the things that's happened in the industry is we've become incredibly reactive, and that's not necessarily good for our clients. So part of our philosophy in working with something we'll talk about in a minute, which is we call the 3-client approach, is TPAs, a really well-run TPA that's structured properly, can be the first line and should be the first line of defense, especially for technical issues and just little questions. So one of the things that we're able to do for advisors, for example, is there are a lot of calls come advisors' directions that really should be directed back to either us as the TPA or the record keeper. And all that time really is eating into profit margins and not allowing them to get back out and service their clients and sell new plans. So one of the things that we do is really focus on calling us first and developing really good relationships there.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. What we're very proud of within the group, actually with the addition of the 10th firm, we'll be up to about 175 credentialed employees. There's a lot more people than that, but those are, specific commitments to technical knowledge in the industry and continuing education. There aren't really any requirements for TPAs to do that, and that's why we mention it. So this is voluntary on our part. We're very much like most financial advisors. We take compliance and we take continuing education very seriously. I talked about plan design a minute ago and technical corrections. What TPAs are really good at is taking data and information and looking at it critically and coming up with solutions for both advisors, wholesalers, and plan sponsors around design and different plan types. We spend a lot of time customizing plans to businesses in terms of maximizing tax benefit, getting money back to key employees. And then a lot of us have developed a very specific design process. And when we run illustrations, what plan design illustrations that we typically don't do one-pagers, for example. And the reason is that we think it commoditizes the knowledge that advisors and TPAs have around how to run retirement plans and the nuts and bolts of taxes and things behind it. So the processes that we've developed really help advisors qualify plans. And what I mean by that is that if you come down market, especially, and Lyle was talking about that earlier, startups and small plans, there's an opportunity if they're well designed to really grow these plans quickly. And also the design process qualifies it. And what I mean by that is that if a business prospect will not give you their entity type, date of birth, date of hire, compensation, ownership information, the odds of them doing business with you are pretty low. So we use the design process to help qualify and actually sell retirement plans. And I'll hit a little bit more on that in a minute.
So Pat, we had a question that maybe we should stop and take. Sure. The question was about 403B plans in particular. Are they concentrated in a particular segment or segments, or do they run the gamut? Some of those segments are like the Wild West, like the public K-12, right? And it seems that they could benefit from a TPA in particular. So from my experience, right, our 401k, our 403B plans, in my mind, really run the gamut. I have both. I tend personally to concentrate on the ERISA type plans, not usually those public schools. But Pat, what's your other thought about that?
Yeah, the traditional TSA 403B plans that are technically defined contribution plans are really tough to deal with in terms of both advisors and record keepers and TPAs. The reason is that they have an open-ended ability a lot of times to work with different advisors and different custodial services, find a lot of annuities and weird, assets with very high expense ratios. And that's not necessarily good, especially for teachers. 403Bs tend to be concentrated in hospitals, teachers. You have church plans, which are non-ERISA 403Bs. And they're definitely specialty areas in that. If I was an advisor, I actually would stay away from like the local school districts and things like that have very disparate, custodial and investment solutions. That being said, there's real opportunities in both governmental 457Bs and in 403Bs and 403B and non-ERISA 403Bs. That actually happens to be something my firm specializes in, mostly in Missouri and Illinois as far as governmental goes. But we do a lot of church plans and a lot of 403Bs for nonprofit associations and different groups like that. I'll tell you, if you can get the business, the clients are very loyal. The challenge can be is that a lot of time those organizations are pressured from a cash flow point of view, so they tend to be a little more fee sensitive than maybe other organizations.
Yeah, and Mike's follow-up comments was, yeah, it seems to make the most sense to focus on the ERISA plans, although the K-12 could use the most help. And I agree with that.
Yep.
I think a lot of times they just don't really know what to do, and they're getting, maybe multiple things coming at them. So I totally agree that they could probably use the help. They're just really the hardest sometimes to deal with. So. Okay, let's go to the next slide. If my screen will move, there we go.
This is something that's near and dear to our heart. We talk about this all the time as TPAs, and within the Serato group, we've started tracking statistically how we do on in particular close rates. And what we found going back and looking is that in general, if we just do a quote, if a financial advisor comes to us and says, hey, will you provide a quote, we close about 30% of those plans. If we are afforded the opportunity and can get census data, the things I was mentioning earlier, date of birth, date of hire, entity type, ownership, family relationships, and we can prepare a plan design or illustration, we find that we jump to about a 50% close rate. And that's incredibly powerful. And then the other thing for well-qualified TPAs like Serato Group members is that if advisors in particular take us to meetings, and that's not true for every TPA. There are some TPAs that you do not want to put in front of clients from a sales point of view. One of my favorite lines is don't confuse sales with delivery. We can worry about the technical stuff and all the details after we close the business. But what we found is if we do a proposal, do an illustration, and can get in front of the client, we have about a 70% close rate. I don't think a lot of advisors realize how powerful that is in partnering with TPAs. Not only does it improve profitability in terms of saving you time, but the technical expertise we bring. For example, we have one individual that was a former wholesaler. We have people that have a lot of experience within the group and really know how to sell plans. There aren't a lot of TPAs. If you rolled up 10 TPA firms that sell 2,000 plans a year plus, there just aren't. So the proof is in the numbers in terms of our production and the growth of our firms. So we would encourage advisors and wholesalers to take us to meetings. Let us do our thing. For example, what I do is I'll talk to an advisor and say, hey, I'll sit there and not say a word until you turn to me and say, Pat, what do you think? In other cases, I've gotten in meetings where the advisors immediately turn the meeting over to us and we're off and running. So we can be a real asset to help closing business.
I agree with that, Pat. And I will also add that like running illustrations for me is not just on a startup plan. Even when I have a takeover, I ask for a copy of their current plan document. I ask for a census. I ask for that information because it really helps me determine if they, need some changes, if something's not working for them. Has anybody talked to them about being even something as simple as safe harbor? So I always think that there's value. And, a lot of times clients really appreciate that. Maybe nobody's talked to them about the plan since it was set up 10 years ago. I mean, who knows what happened? So, it's not just startup where we run illustrations. It really is helpful for any plan that we are looking at.
Yeah, I'll add to that, kind of tying back a little bit into what Lyle mentioned earlier when we had the paychecks payroll discussion, not necessarily a pep topic, but what we find a lot is that the payroll providers do a lot of volume year in and year out, but they lose about the same amount of plans every year. They don't really grow well. They don't have good retention. We find a lot is they just drop them in a safe harbor match, and then we'll get a look at the plan 3 or 4 years down the road, and that design's no longer applicable, but no one's talking to the business about improving and upgrading their plan, and that's where TPAs are incredibly valuable. So good point, Teresa.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, so talk about your 3-client approach, because I love this.
Yeah, philosophically, one of the things that we're working on as a group, and I do in my own firm, is what I call the 3-client approach. And the reason that we developed this is I like the rule of 3, first of all. One of my mentors sat down and said, hey, tell me about your business. And I was sitting there going, well, I really run, or what he said was, tell me about your business. And then he said, who are your clients? And then I sat there and thought about it. Since we're referral based as TPAs, we actually have 3 clients, financial advisors and wholesalers. And I kind of group wholesalers can be payroll, DCIO, 401k wholesalers. And then philosophically, what we do there is we look at that and say, what's the lowest common denominator for all of our clients? So what we've come up with is actually listed here. It's more conversational. Is the lowest common denominator is timely and accurately installing retirement plans. If we do that well, that leads to repeat business from the advisors and wholesalers. We get out of the plan sponsor's hair and move on. But what it also means is the wholesaler gets sales credit quicker. The advisor starts cash flowing revenue on their side and being compensated quicker. And then the business is satisfied and happy. And what we find is there's a direct correlation between if you install that plan well, the retention probably doubles. If you have a bad installation, they'll probably be gone in 2 to 3 plan years, or as soon as someone else comes along just because they had a bad experience. So installation is critical. But with that in mind, for financial advisors, what we particularly focus on is market intelligence, helping them retain clients through the services we provide, being aware of the world that they're in, growing assets under management for advisors and under administration for us. But more importantly, maximize your time and increase close rates. And why we feel that's important is because as compensation's gotten compressed for advisors, there's a lot of negativity around plans and a lot of advisors won't touch them. And we as TPAs know that if you structure the plan properly with the right record keeper, the right investments, and the right TPA, and let the infrastructure do the work for you and just be the relationship manager and service the client on the investment side, and then let TPAs do the heavy lifting, we're very valuable to advisors in their business, not to mention increasing close rates on the sales side. So we've focused very heavily on that. And one of the things I talk about a lot is market intelligence. What I mean by that is that within the Serato group, we have at least 1 or more people. We actually have 5 people on one board. We have someone who has a seat at the table with every single record keeper that has a TPA program and has a TPA council. And we're very influential. And we also know a lot of things we're not supposed to know in terms of just having a web nationally throughout the industry, through all the different firms. And part of the Serato group is that we're not competitors. We're geographically diverse. We have different expertise, and we cover the entire country. So there's a Serato group TPA in your neighborhood that would love to talk to you, and we'd be happy to do those introductions. The 3-client approach really leads to higher close rates, better retention, and repeat business in our experience. So we focus very heavily on that.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so let me kind of talk a little about this and how, we're a resource, we're a partner, and we get results, right? We help in the administration of your retirement plan clients. We talked about this already. We fix broken retirement plans. If you have a plan that has a problem, we have the expertise to help with that. We're a good resource for market intelligence, which Pat already talked about. Expertise with plan design, administration, compliance, anything that client could need related to a plan. As the Serato group, right, we understand each other's service models, right, and we really work together. So if there's something that I can't handle, we can go out to the group and be like, hey, who has expertise in this area? So, Pat said it before, not all of the Serato group firms do actuarial. Not all the Serato group firms do 316, but we have 3 who have actuaries on staff, 3 firms who do 316. So we can definitely have some of those conversations and share each other. And that's exactly what we do. And the last thing I'll always say is, as TPAs, whether it's a Serato group member or another TPA, ask us for help when you need it. We're here to help. We want to make sure that that everything is the way it should be, that the client's getting what they need to get, and we are here to be a resource for sure. Anything to add to that?
No, I would just add that with the complexions of things, how they're consolidating in the industry, both for TPAs, record keepers and advisors, broker dealers, it's getting more and more competitive. As Lyle talked about the oncoming of MEPs and PEPs and the viability of those and the growth of them are advantages for one side and threats for the other. They could or couldn't be good for a certain business depending on the makeup of the business. What we bring to the table is flexibility, problems, solving problems and keeping plan sponsors out of trouble. Go back to the near and dear to Ari's heart, the payroll TPA market does not do a good job of administering plans. One of the things that I talk about in my practice around technical corrections is that our biggest feeder is actually plans that have been at ADP or Paychecks, come out of that environment, and we see everything from their document hasn't been updated to they didn't file their 5500 to, wow, everyone's in the plan as a highly compensated employee and you passed and all the testing and you're not a safe harbor. So we see some pretty crazy stuff. The value we bring, I think, is diminished and marginalized in the industry. And that's part of the reason we started the Serato Group. We're in a highly regulated, very technical, commoditized industry. And we believe that if you're going to bring value to the table, the best way to do that is including a TPA, and in particular, a Serato Group TPA in the mix.
Yep. And we had a really great question, which is something we should have covered. Are there other TPA firms that have banded together in a group like you guys, or are you unique in your structure? And we are definitely unique in our structure. We are the first group to have done something like this. And like I started out by saying, we are legally a trade association, a 501c6. We know of no other group, no other TPA group that has done something like this. I expect that there will be people who will try to do this, and we will be bringing other TPAs into our group, right, if they hit certain markets that we're not already in and those kind of things. So I do expect that there will be others, but right now we are definitely one of a kind, and we're proud to be and happy that, we put a lot of hard work. I mean, when you have 9 business owner TPAs who work together for 8 months, meet at least once a week for an hour to really put everything together and what we want to accomplish and how we want to do this, that's powerful. It wasn't like we just threw this together and came across it. So definitely something we're very proud of. Definitely something I think you'll hear more about. I'm going to end, and Pat, I'll let you join in here. I just wanted to make sure we got to this before our time was up. We have hired Ann Slavinski. She is our executive director, for those of you who don't know. Ann, she actually was John Hancock's TPA, headed TPA for a long, long time. She retired, moved to Hawaii, and now she has come on board as our executive director. So you can see that we are definitely committed to what we are doing. The Serato Group, our industry, that is very, very important to us. Her contact information is on here, as well as our website. And on our website, you can see all the members. There's a map out there, all those kind of things. So happy to do that. Pat, I'll let you go ahead and close if there's anything you wanted to add there.
Sure. I'll add to what Teresa said. I think the Serato Group is very unique. And we kind of jokingly behind the scenes hope that other TPAs and other groups try to mimic what we're doing. You can't manufacture what we have. Prior to formally establishing the Serato Group, we had a group of TPAs that were getting together annually that didn't compete with each other, that were very like-minded for 20 years. So we've been working together for over 20 years within the industry. There's 5 past presidents in the group of the National Institute of Pension Administrators, which is called NIPA. We're very serious about this. And it's in direct correlation or response to all the consolidation that's going on in the industry. And we're fiercely independent, even though we've established this trade association. Each company stands on their own. And we believe that brings flexibility. We're very nimble. tons of market intelligence, and can be a fabulous resource for both financial advisors, CPAs, as well as wholesalers. So we really appreciate your time and the opportunity to talk about the group, and would love to hear from you. If you'd like to reach out to us, we have a LinkedIn page for the Serato group, or you can reach out to Teresa and I individually. And then it's also, as I mentioned here, our website, which is the seratogroup.org. If you know, one of the things that we didn't mention is that we actually made a $10,000 donation to the World Wildlife Fund this year. So again, we're very serious about this. This isn't marketing hype. This is something that we live and do every day. So we really appreciate your time and would love to hear from you. Thank you. Thanks, Ari.
Thank you. Let me get going here. And let me get my sharing screen. This is always, you know, you would think after, you know, quite a few events that I would actually get this, you know, done right or whatnot. Does everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Or nobody sees my screen?
Nope, it's up.
It's up? Okay.
I see it.
Great, because I always have this problem with the playing from start. My playing from start key is always by where the top of the bar is, where it says screen sharing. You are screen sharing, so I can never move it. So anyway, I thank everybody for being here. I'm sorry about my hair, but I just see the closeness of my barber to my face, and so therefore there's certain things with COVID that I'll deal with. My barber probably doesn't have COVID. It's just but by May 1st, they'll be gone. So anyway, let's talk about straight talk with what is going on here. Here's a little warning. These are opinions. These are my opinions, and opinions are opinions. They aren't wrong unless they're based on incorrect facts, such as most discussions on my community Facebook groups. And I'm like in a fiery spirit today because I've been dealing with some people on Facebook who, you know, try to tell me, I love when non-lawyers try to tell me what my constitutional rights are, or non-medical professionals will tell me about how I should take care of my health issues. But, you know, opinions are based on experience. You know, as Pat pointed out, I write, you know, annually articles about payroll provider TPAs. And it's always funny. I've been doing it every year since started my practice in 2010. And what I always love the most is when I'll post the article, not as much as I used to in the past, but in the past you would post the article and then you would have people who are payroll provider TPAs who would say, "Oh, Ari, that's not true. This is, you know what, my experience shapes my opinions." Now, had I been a risk attorney and I dealt with payroll provider TPAs and the plans were run efficiently and run well, that would have been my opinion. Payroll provider TPAs aren't bad, but my experience on, you know, and when I say payroll providers, I really mean the top 2 payroll providers in the country. They're not very good at TPA services. Maybe there's some local yokel payroll provider TPAs. So, you know, maybe they're good at it. I don't know, but I know from the top 2, they're not very, very good at it. And it's always funny. I always think about the last live event we had was in Disney World, at Walt Disney World, right when the pandemic was about to break. You know, we left on a Wednesday. The conference ended on a Wednesday, and by Sunday the park was closed thanks to COVID. And the Retireaholics were there, and I did a presentation. You know, they were there for a show, and we did a live show and whatnot. And I said, you know, I'm the turd in the punch bowl. I'm the guy who will just say how I think it is, regardless of how it rankles people. And I think that's a good thing, and that's a bad thing. The good thing is, you know where I stand. That's the bad thing is that now you know I don't get invited to a lot of conferences anymore, and probably had to start my own, because I'm frank and honest, and I don't work with payroll provider TPAs. I work with local TPAs. I work with RIAs, whatnot. So these are just really some of the opinions that I have based on what's going on in the industry. And COVID, obviously, a year later, we are still in this mess. You know, when I came home from Orlando, that time in March 2020 and my kids stopped going to school on Friday, you know, you thought, oh, 6 to 8 weeks, this thing would be over. Now, you know, over a year in it, we're still in it. And, you know, the thing is, we have to look at what has been going on and see how, forget about the virus for a second and how many people it's killed and injured and whatnot. Let's look at the industry as a whole. And as bad as COVID, I think you would have looked at as the industry and being somebody as an ERISA attorney and you know, being a solo attorney and wearing where the bills are. As bad as we thought it might be, I think the industry seems to have withstood the issues concerning it. You know, there are partial terminations, there are people stopping the match and whatnot, but Armageddon for the industry, I think, was staved off. And the fact is that so many of the jobs lost and so many businesses closing, what people really don't mention is that the businesses failed were companies that didn't have a retirement plan in place. You know, the local restaurants, these are people that typically didn't have a 401k plan in place. So whatever negative impact, it wasn't bigger than I thought it might be. You know, businesses really continue from the industry, thanks to technological improvements in the industry. I think that's one thing that I think people forget about. I started this business in 1998. We did not have a working website for the TPA that I worked at. Everything was done by paper or by phone. You still had a lot of trustee directed 401k plans. And, you know, one of the funniest things about plain documents, I haven't raised the price of a plain document in the 22 years I've been in practice. And the reason why is the software has changed. It's so much easier to draft a plain document. Now you can get everything in a PDF. You don't have to, you can email the plain document to the client. You don't have to go and have the documents bound and mailed and all that stuff. So technological improvements have really helped the industry out. And that's why, you know, thanks to fee transparency and competition and technological breakthroughs, we've seen, you know, fees going down. And I think that so many of the things, you know, going back, I remember the first time I ever took a vacation working for TPA. I was a year at work. It was 1999. My fear was I'd take a week off and then I'd go back to my desk and I'd see, you know, a pile of file folders and unanswered emails. But thanks to technology, you know, I can answer email on my phone. I don't have file folders anymore, but that's a whole nother story. But, you know, it could have been a lot worse had we had this pandemic, 20 years ago. Yes, there will be live events this year, I believe. There'll be NAPA in September. My events also will be in September. We scheduled 3 that were postponed from 2020, and we're going to try to run them in September. And, you know, going back to technology, it really did hold up. People can actually work from home instead of the old days when they really didn't. And that's a funny joke that I would have because I worked on a TPA shop. I worked for 2 TPA shops where there were a few plan administrators that would work from home 2 days a week. I could never work from home. I never had access, and most people at the time didn't have access to their computers. They didn't have everything on a cell phone. They didn't have software that they could get through on a website. So we did have, I remember I worked at a TPA, we did have one person who was in charge of our compliance. And 2 days she worked from home because she lived in the city and we were in Syosset. And I think one of our employees was an administrator. He had the day off and he ran into her on her working from home day. And she was taking her daughter to the zoo that day, the Bronx Zoo. But, you know, thanks to technology, you know, people can work from home. And that's the beauty of it, that again, 20 years ago, that would have been a huge problem. But I think the fact of the matter is that COVID is going to have an effect on this business for many years to come. Why is that? because, you know, it's always interesting, you know, there's the pandemic issue, but I think that there's going to be a change in the industry that is going to be long-term, and, you know, we'll obviously see how that pans out. I really think that we'll have less travel to outside events. I think that, you know, for national events, I think they're going to be scaled back. I think less people are likely to go. I mean, we don't really know the psychological impact once the pandemic is finally lifted, and, you know, at least here in New York, we still have to wear masks. People's attitudes are going to change. People are not going to want to travel as much. So that's why I have my national event that we have in January. It's going to be virtual again in 2022, because I think that, you know, if your name isn't Napa, FI 360, ASPA, Schwab Impact, you know, some of the other, you know, custodian meetings or whatnot, plant custodian type national events, I think that, you know, there's going to be a cutback in travel. I think that TPAs and financial advisors have learned that Zoom meetings work. Zoom works. The fact that we're here, you know, the fact that I remember the first Zoom meeting I had, the Zoom webinar in April, had hundreds and hundreds of events, is why, you know, the technology's there. It's easy. Just yesterday, I had a trustees meeting. You know, it would take me a half hour to get there, a half hour back, 15, 20 minutes to wait. Think about all that much time I've saved because I was able to attend the trustees meeting through Zoom. And, you know, for TPAs and advisors, you know, I work with a great TPA salesperson by the name of Rich Larita. And he traveled, you know, 20 some odd days out of the month. Zoom would allow him to do that kind of work with less time out of the office. And, you know, time is money and money is time. And I really think that, you know, obviously there are obviously going to be clients that you're going to have to go meet because of the nature of the relationship, that you're going to have to meet for Zoom meetings. But I still think that there will be a cutback as an industry as a whole. And again, travel so much time. You know, and Rich would have to go out west for our Western clients and make a swing out of it. All that time lost through travel isn't lost by having a simple Zoom meeting. You know, and of course, thanks to Zoom, will plan providers cut back on space and or move to the burbs? That remains to be seen. But, you know, as you know, some states, people are coming back to work. I do know some businesses that are still cutting back on space in terms of still allowing people to work from home. And I think that, you know, for a TPA in New York, being in Garden City or being in Syosset or Melville is far less expensive than Manhattan. They may move to the burbs of the country. Cost is cheaper. Technology allows you to be more flexible. And, you know, that's just being more cost effective by cutting back on rent. And let's talk about PEPs. I love PEPs. I want to say that I love PEPs, and the reason that I love PEPs is because it fixed what I thought was a error by the Department of Labor, dealing with the tag case on the advisory opinion, pretty much outlawing closed MEPs as a single plan for ERISA purposes. I like it, but I'm frank and honest with it. It's not the greatest thing since sliced bread. We have seen PEPs before. PEPs are really open MEPs with a pooled plan provider and guidance. More importantly, we have guidance now. Department of Labor has said, you know, a pooled plan provider, you have that and you follow the rules and whatnot, you're a single plan for ERISA purposes. But the funny thing about the DOL and PEPs is, you know, that it took a congressional law, took a legislation signed into law by President Trump to allow for PEPs, because Department of Labor had about 8 years to figure out what they would allow as an open MEP, and they completely punted it and still wanted commonality. Trump asked them to come out with regulations to allow for MEPs prior to the change in the law, and they punted again. Still wanted commonality. Thanks to PEPs, we don't need commonality. Like I said with Lyle before, there have been so many PEP announcements, but there haven't been a lot of announcements of these PEPs generating a lot of assets. You can go and one of my favorite websites to check daily is 401k Help Center, and you'll see the press releases. So-and-so unveiled a PEP. So-and-so unveiled a PEP for redheaded ERISA attorneys. So-and-so, I used to be a redhead, but that's a whole nother story too. But so-and-so is working with an association and then developing a PEP. And this sounds all great in paper, but 90 to 95% of these MEPs are going to fail. And why are they going to fail? They're going to fail because they don't have assets. And it's such a long process collecting assets. How do I know this? I've been in the open and closed MEP business. And the most successful MEP that I'm still a part of, north of $100 million, took 4 or 5 years to get that to a size of, that it was working out. It's all about collecting assets. And, if you don't have the assets, the audit could be a PEP killer. And yeah, I know that the PEP audit requirements are far less onerous than a MEP. And that's the biggest, I think, plus for a PEP over a MEP, other than the pool plan provider, is the audit requirement. So MEP requires 100 more participants for an audit. Forget about that 81-20 rule for a second. For a PEP to need an audit, they either have to hit 1,000 lives or having an adopting employer with 100 more participants. So yeah, working on a solo PEP, when we hit 1,000 participants, we know we need an audit. But if we were working in another PEP and you had an adopting employer with 100 more employees, then we would need an audit there as well. The problem with PEPs, I find, is that providers weren't really ready for it. Usually when we have a change in the law, a substantive change of the law, a perfect example was Pension Protection Act of 2006. I believe that was the Pension Protection Act of 2006, or I'm sorry, it was probably EGTRA it was probably EGTRA dealing with the catch-up rules. With any substantive change, the IRS tends to be very, very generous and gives us a year or 2 years to figure it all out. And it was only about 13 months, I think, before the law changed allowing for PEPs and for PEPs getting implemented. And there was this whole little thing called, COVID pandemic. And the Department of Labor and the IRS, but more importantly, the Department of Labor was very, very slow to the take in implementing regulations for PEPs. I'm a pool plan provider. Department of Labor said, this is going to be this registration requirement, and they really opened it up in late November. There was a mad rush, and there was such a mad rush with so little guidance. We still have custodians and corporate trustees that still don't have agreements that will allow them to partake in the PEP marketplace. So that's why on the PEPs that I've worked with, you have plans in January and you're only finalizing them in March and April. I find that PEPs are going to be more attractive for employers that don't have a plan. It might not make sense with employers that have plans and assets. And there's just, again, so many providers that aren't offering them because they fear that it will cannibalize its own business. Like with MEPs, it will take you years to grow a PEP into a situation where it's cost effective. It will take time. I want to say, how many PEPs have I worked on already? More than half a dozen. And it's slow. Getting that first adopting employer is great, but that first adopting employer is great with no assets. Great, you got a PEP with no assets. It's going to be a slow and tedious process. And again, like I said, 90 to 95% of the PEPs that you see advertise that they're there are not going to make it overall because they are slow and don't get enough assets to justify their existence. There are a lot of financial advisor group want their own PEPs unless they have that business to support it. Lockton can do it. Some of the other national RIAs can do it, multiple offices, but a local office in New York, let's say on Long Island, probably shouldn't have a PEP on its own unless, again, they're such a substantial business that they have these opportunities, or they're working with other brokers or advisors to offer these PEPs. I don't think it's wise for them to have their PEP on their own. And again, I think that too many businesses are cannibalizing their business by focusing on PEPs. PEPs shouldn't force you to lower your fee in the hopes of getting it back in assets, because it doesn't often work. I don't tell the story often, but when I first started the Rose Mountain Law Firm PC, I started it in 2000, not 2010. I started as a side business with the hopes that maybe one day I would go out on my own. I had this really stupid idea that I would advertise my services by offering a will for $100. It failed. Why? Because first of all, nobody's really shopping for an attorney based on cost, but you never make it back up when you lower your fee so much. You never make it back up in bulk. We're not Costco. Costco could sell in bulk because Costco has the customers on the private and commercial side where there is a need to buy things in bulk. You lower your price, you tend to never get it back in increased work. And too often people will cut their nose to spite their face. Marketing should be, in my opinion, the delegation on the fiduciary function. I think that that's a huge deal. I don't think that their actual savings and fees will really materialize that much unless it's a mega PEP. I was pricing out one MEP, and TPAs. There was always the New York Lottery commercial. All you need is $1 and a dream. And so many people have these association, relationships. And my God, we're going to set up a MEP and a PEP, or I know this payroll provider that's got 3,000 contacts, and we're going to sell a MEP or a PEP, and they get 3. The problem with that is that most TPAs are wise to that. They're not going to price plans on dreams and hopes. They are going to price plans so they don't lose their shirts. So the problem is when you have a minimum of $2,500 for an adopting employer, let's say, for example, that's not much difference than what that adopting employer could do on their own. So that's why I think that the marketing should be based on the delegation of fiduciary function. And again, because I don't believe that the cost savings are really going to be there until you have, a mega PEP that, is cost effective. I still think that there's guidance coming down the pike eventually. I don't think that we're fully there. And it's very easy to now see have a PEP, a lot harder to say it actually has assets. And again, the best laid plans of mice and men and women, of course. I don't want to be, I just like that phrase from the Twilight Zone episode, Time Enough at Last with Burgess Meredith. That was in Rod Serling's in narration, the best laid plans of mice and men. And I just had a situation here where I set up a PEP with a TPA out here in New York. And a potential adopting employer came and said, our attorney looked at this. And based on the email, I don't think it was an ERISA attorney, but it was our attorney looked at this and they said, there's not much guidance. It's not really clear cut whether we're going to have any limit on our liability. And the TPA looked at the docket plan, summary plan description. And I, I'm not telling an ancient secret over here, but I use a volume submitter plain document. I use FIS Relias. And throughout my plan document, Relias provided us with a PEP, like snap-on amendment to allow for a PEP plan document. So the adopting employer said, our attorneys looked at this and they said to fix the SPD, it'll cost them $15,000 to $30,000 to fix the SPD. I could write an SPD in Pig Latin and charge a lot less than $15,000. That was, I think, the nice way of this potential adopting employer saying, you know what, we're no longer interested in the PEP. We're not interested. It was just a nice way of doing that. So you're making excuses. The process is slow. We're still, to steal a line from Naked Gun, we still have to feel our way around. And that's how I still see how the PEP marketplace is. It's still very, very new. And we really haven't seen plans get, substantive in size. We hear, again, it reminds me of my next door neighbor in Canarsie, Brooklyn. He gambled a lot, and he would, based on the way he talked, he always won. He never lost. And based on the discussions in the industry, you will hear announcements about PEPs, but you won't hear announcements when those PEPs close, because that's the nature of how the business is and the nature of marketing. Other points to consider, the litigation front. I think federal courts are tired of a lot of ERISA cases, especially the costs. Just showing that a plan sponsor is charging more for plans. The plan sponsor is being charged more for plans doesn't mean that they breached their fiduciary duty. They're going to require better complaints from plaintiff attorneys to show that higher costs were an actual breach of fiduciary duty. I think there are too many ERISA litigators providing weak complaints that just say, well, our plan is, 20 basis points higher than an average other plan, but that doesn't show a breach. You have to show more than just cost. You have to show that the lack of cost control led to a fiduciary breach. So I think that, ERISA ERISA cases are going to have a tougher time in federal court. And I think there have to be better pleadings from ERISA attorneys. Not everybody can be like Jerry Schlichter. There are a lot of other ERISA litigators who joined the bandwagon and probably don't know much about ERISA. I think in any case where you're alleging that somebody like Fidelity is a fiduciary, you're going to lose a case like that, which brings up the Shell case. I brought it up months earlier. There was a question on whether participant data is a plan asset and whether using participant data to sell outside services is a misuse of a plan asset and a private transaction. Shell case came back just now, and for the time being, the courts disagree right now. They don't feel that participant data is a plan asset in that case. Of course, the plaintiff, which I believe is represented by Jerry Schlichter, I think does have the right to replead the case, amend the complaint. But a strict literal reading of ERISA and the regulations do not give inference that participant data is a plan asset. But the beauty of law and the beauty of federal court law is that while it's the view of one federal court, another federal court may have a different view. So that's not a law until the Supreme Court opines. That's not something that, I would say with definiteness, participant data is not a plan asset, but I think that that's where we're leading to. Cybersecurity, Department of Labor is going to focus on that. They said that because they talked about it. And the GAO is telling the Government Accountability Office, is telling the Department of Labor that they also need to act on it. We've seen a few litigation cases on it. I think if you're a plan provider, make sure you have a policy in place, especially if you're a TPA. Identify your security protocols. I think that when you see the cases, when you read the cases through 401k Help Center, and their thefts of participant, there's theft of participant funds. It's usually the TPA just making mistakes, different addresses, not understanding that you shouldn't fall for a different address. When somebody's sending you a check for information on ACH, if it's check 01, maybe that's a problem. But I think it's important that every plan provider have a policy in place. I think that going forward in the future, one day, Department of Labor auditor will ask for, plan sponsor to have a cybersecurity policy, as well as the cybersecurity policy of the vendors that they work with. The ESG rule was reversed. Not a shock by me. ESG funds isn't something that most plans have. I still think there are issues surrounding them, especially on the fiduciary front. Don't we want investments that have the best, rate of return? And does that conflict with an ESG fund? And what exactly is an ESG fund? Because just like with target dates, you go through different fund families and they all have different definitions of what they think is an ESG fund. So that's my caveat. The best interest rule exemption wasn't reversed. Thanks for the typo, Ari. But the Biden administration didn't want another 2 to 4 year dance on formulating another fiduciary rule. So I was surprised by that. I thought they might have ditched it, but they didn't. So it's here to stay for now. Consolidation in this business will obviously continue. We see it now more on the RIA front, but we will still see it on the TPA side. I think the bigger companies, when some of the providers that I've used in the past get larger, they become elephants, and elephants can't run as quickly as mouses can. And when you're publicly traded, or you're just gobbling companies and getting larger and larger, they focus on generating the greatest amount of revenue. So they're going to start pruning, markets that aren't as profitable. It's like Procter & Gamble. I used to own that stock. I used to love Procter & Gamble. And then they got rid of different brands that I liked, Pringles and Folgers. And the reason they did that was because it wasn't generating an ROI like Tide does. So you'll see it on the TPA market where, one of the bigger providers, I don't need to mention names, but one of the bigger providers can say, you know what, we don't want to, these smaller plans, we're going to raise our minimums, we're going to raise our minimum plan size. They're not cost effective to us. We don't have as much of rate of return as we do with some of the larger plans. So that's just going to be room for the smaller plan providers. I think if you're not large, it's still an opportunity out there. When I talk of marketing, Eric Bischoff just made the WWE Hall of Fame. I know what you're saying, wrestling's fake and all that. But Eric Bischoff was a vice president of WCW, which was a competitor to WWE. In the late 90s, he had success against them. And the reason he had success was he looked at what the WWE was doing and he did things differently. And so the wrestling fans gravitated to a newer product that was fun and exciting. And I think that's important for plan providers to do as well. Look at what the competition is doing and seeing what what they do and seeing what you can do that is unique. When I started my own practice, I looked at my self when I was part of a semi-prestigious Long Island law firm, and I said, well, they charge by hour. Why don't I charge a flat fee? Why don't I market myself a certain different way? This isn't the cola business where you have, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. There's plenty of room and space for everybody else. I wrote that when I learned again that RC Cola is still a thing. And I haven't seen RC Cola in a store for years and years, but people tell me that I could go to one of those Dollar General stores and see it. And again, the ESG rule reversed, no shock. Okay, I guess I repeated myself. The restatements for DC plans, deadline is July 2022. ERISA attorneys are going to have to eat too. Let's talk about some of the events that we're doing before we leave today. That 401k virtual bunch, Jamie Raskin, Congressman from Maryland. He will speak. We will have a special event. It's going to be a webinar type. It's not the usual bunch where we have everybody interjecting. I just want to limit it to just questions that the audience may have. Then I'll ask as a moderator. Jamie Raskin is somebody that I know very, very well. When I was a law student, he was the associate dean who took a lot of pity on me. We agree nothing much about politics, but he's a dear friend of mine, and so we will talk to him on May 10th. He was supposed to speak at that 401k National Virtual Conference back in January, but there was something around that week that was a little bit more important than my conference. There was something called an impeachment, and he was the Democrats' impeachment manager in the Senate. So he'll talk to us for a half hour, and I hope you be a part of that, free to attend. We'll be back live, hopefully, eventually. And the goal is on September 10th, 2021, Friday. We will be at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, Mo. There'll be supposedly a game that night. I haven't checked the schedule yet against who the Cardinals are going to play, but we should have a fun event, 9 to 2 p.m. The sign-up page is going to go back up. Anybody who previously signed or previously sponsored, your money is safe with us. You know, I know a thing or two about being a fiduciary, so, you know, I'm also knowing about Baylor law as well. And Houston, hopefully we won't have a problem. We're scheduled to be there on Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. You know, I would have wanted to have these events earlier, but, you know, the fact is that I know that nobody's planning events for June or July and August. So hopefully we can do this in September. I know the sign-up page is available right now. Minnesota, probably the week before. Let's talk about the Skinny on the Live events. It's $100 to attend. You get 5 hours of content, stadium tour, Q&A with sports legends. Hopefully J.R. Richard that we had for Houston that we booked will be there for our September event in Houston. Don't know who we have in the Cardinals. My son always gives me ideas, but my son's budget is far greater than mine. His budget is unlimited. Mine is limited. So he wanted me to invite Keith Hernandez to St. Louis. Keith is a Mets analyst, and I don't think he'd be traveling. We'll get somebody who's local to the St. Louis area to attend. It'll be a baseball game that night when it's a baseball stadium. Obviously, we had events in Dallas at AT&T Stadium, and we had at the Gillette Stadium as well. So there's no baseball game there. Hopefully, we'll do Vegas in December, and hopefully, we will have events in 2022. But let's get through getting vaccinated and having this thing end and whatnot. And again, the National Virtual Conference, $20, 22 cents to attend, 2 days, great content. And if you're interested in sponsoring it, you won't go broke. Sign up today. We do have a handful of people that already signed up for the event in January. And it's all about bearings these days. Everybody knows my contact information. And if you don't, well, here it is. So yes, thank you, Rochelle, about my hair. I'm one of the things, talk about personal stuff with hair. As a kid, I was always worried I was going to go bald. I still have that fear because my father lost his hair. Thankfully, I take after my paternal grandfather. But, you know, when you turn close to 50, it thins out a little bit. And this is my way of showing that I still can grow my hair. But again, I have this fear of that barber wearing a mask near my face. I don't know why, but I still could go to Cheesecake Factory, but I can't go to the barber. What do I think the most attractive features of the PEP are? Isn't that you might have access to services you might not have if it's a single employer plan. I like the 316 part of it. I'm glad that they added the pooled plan provider, but I'm glad that they allowed MEPs once and for all. I thought it was silly. I still think that the DOL advisory opinion was silly. I understand why. And the reason they did it, they wanted to bounce plan providers out of the box of being plan sponsored. I think that's really the crux of the TAG case. Because TAG, if you read the advisory opinion, created an employer that was really a fiction. The employer didn't really exist. It was just merely to serve as a plan sponsor. And the Department of Labor had a problem with that. So the Department of Labor didn't want to have plan providers creating dummy plan sponsors. So it took, took Trump signing a bill into a law to allow for PEPs. I'm glad it's finally here. and we'll see. We'll see, you know, how it turns out. But like I said, I really believe that a lot of them are just going to fail. Seems there have been a lot of MEP lawsuits lately. Do you think it'll carry over to PEPs? Listen, you become a target when you're large enough. You know, my family has 4 gerbils upstairs. We've had, you know, not the same gerbils, but we have, you know, gerbils for the past 4 or 5 years, I think. They're always, you know, they're prey, so they like to hide. They're afraid. But the larger animal is the bigger target. So when it comes to MEPs, we're seeing lawsuits. It tends to be, you know, PEO type plans or large, substantial, multiple employer plans. That's where you're going to get litigation. That's where we see it. And that's where we will see it for pooled employer plans. Now, if there is somebody out there who's going to get $1 billion as a PEP, don't be surprised that you will have litigation. And that's all it is. I mean, you know, I hate to treat it this way, but if you ever seen the movie Once Upon a Time in America, it's a bunch of street boys in the Lower East Side, and they would roll drunks. They would roll people who were drunk and take money from them. And sometimes I compare that to ERISA attorneys, ERISA litigators who see large plans, and it's all about, let's get a lawsuit out of this, because a lawsuit, you know, we get 1/3 or 40% plus costs. Let's get a target. Let's get an aggrieved participant, a former participant, and let's roll them for a lawsuit. So I think that you're going to see lawsuits with PEPs once you get PEPs that, you know, achieve, you know, enough of a size. Yes, Mike, you are on the list. You don't have to re-register. We still have your money. We still have the lists. So if you're registered for Minneapolis or St. Louis or Houston, you're still registered. Same thing with the plan providers that were kind enough to sponsor. I didn't steal your money. It's still going towards the conference. I still have deposits with these stadiums, and I haven't called it yet. The only deposit I'm concerned about is I was planning a networking event at Citi Field in July 30th against the Braves. I'm concerned about that one because I don't know if that event's going to happen when right now at Citi Field we only have 20% capacity, and you need a couple months to advertise and whatnot. But that's my only fear. So I guess that's it for questions. So I guess we hit it 18, 20 minutes early. So I appreciate everybody being here. And of course, next event is going to be that 401k virtual bunch on May the 10th. May 22nd, we're also going to have an event with James Moyna, CPA, JM CPA. They're a Illinois and Atlanta, Georgia auditing firm. So it'll be great to talk to him. So I thank you, everybody, and have a great Friday.